and that's One Nation Senator Pauline Hanson. So let's bring Pauline on now. Senator, great to have you with us. Tell me, what did you think when you heard Labor spent $100,000 rushing MPs in for that one-off meeting? As Danica said, it was for 90 minutes.
I am absolutely furious about it, James. I cannot believe that they've done it. This is what the Albanese Labor government does in Australia. It's a complete waste of money that goes on constantly all the time. You know, in Queensland, we have kids and the elderly and people who can't get operations purely for the fact is we haven't got the money to supply for the nursing staff or the beds for them. Now, case in point, there's a 9-year-old girl, she's been waiting 7 years to have a tonsillectomy operation. 7 years. She's lost 20 days of school in the last term. She may have to repeat grade 4. It's depressing her and she's not doing well at all. So hence, I've actually offered to pay for this operation, which is now going to go ahead on the 27th of August. Now, these are important things to people, to have these important operations done, not flying politicians here for 90 minutes from all over the country at taxpayers' expense. So I'm very furious about this. Another thing too, it was a previous government of the coalition that actually supported, with the support of One Nation and my vote, got the tax-free tax cuts across the line. They were already in legislation and accounted for. The Albanese government tweaked it a bit to take tax cuts off those high income earners. So those tax cuts were already there in place anyway. And yet to drag people from around the country to pass these tax cuts is an absolute disgrace. And I hope the people remember this. They don't care about the taxpayers' dollars. They will spend it whichever way they want to, because you're going to suffer in the long run, because it has to come out of the taxpayers' pockets somewhere. So you're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. As we said, this was meant to be the big saviour of Middle Australia, but we're going to bill taxpayers at the same time for it. It's extraordinary. Now, Senator, Parliament is back this week. You're planning to call for an inquiry into native title effectiveness. What are you looking at?
Yes, I am. I've been doing some research into this with native title in the early 1990s, just prior to the Eddie Mabo case, which was passed, Queensland versus Eddie Mabo versus Queensland government. That was in 1992. Now, prior to that, around that period of time, there was 14.22% of all land under Australia that was owned under native title. Latest figures that I have from 2016 is over 30%, and with another 31% under determination, which is believed to be passed. So we actually will have over 60% of Australia will be under native title. There's no sunset clause on it. I've put it in a notice motion to actually call for a sunset clause on it. They all voted against it. So they don't want to have a sunset clause on it. How can less than 3% of the population own over 60% of native title without freehold? Aboriginals may own freehold land as well. And yet the other rest of the population, equating to about 26 million people, have to, compromise, or we can't go in certain places, or there are resources, just everything is being, questioned over all this. So I'm putting up another bill that I want it to go to the Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee. I want an investigation into it. What has native title done for the country? What has it done for the Aboriginal people? It's tied up the land. They can't even own it or go on it themselves in a lot of cases. So why are we continuing to do this?
I think a lot of Australians would very much support you in that inquiry, Senator. Staying with Indigenous issues, the PM promised Indigenous people a Truth and Justice Commission, but he now says Makarrata simply means a coming together, which is what his government is doing every day by talking with Indigenous people. Is he gaslighting Aboriginals?
Of course he's gaslighting. He can't even keep his promise, and not only that, he had the referendum, which he had to do to change the Constitution. They can put it in legislation, but he's not game to do that anyway. So because the legislation can be changed, he wanted to have it changed in the referendum to change the Constitution. That's why he wanted to put it in there. The whole thing is about putting Australia into this way, native title, and I'm questioning it, is they want a black state, a black nation within the nation. And that's what it's all about. That was planned in the 1980s. And that's the whole end game of this, is the division of pitting one Australian against another. We are all Australians together. And this is what I've been fighting against for the last 30 years, equality for all Australians. The Prime Minister knows he's dead in the water to follow down this path of the Makarrata Commission, which he's put $5.8 million into funding this commission, because he knows he has to appease the Aboriginals for their vote. Yet he knows that if he goes too far, the Australian people will throw him out of office. So he hasn't been upfront and honest with the Australian people. If he's worried about all this, then please do a full investigation, Royal Commission into where has the $35 to $40 billion a year gone into the Aboriginal industry with no outcomes, no real reporting. You know, there's corruption that's happening in this whole industry. Where is the investigation into sexual abuse? You know, these are things that he needs to show the people of Australia where he stands in true leadership and expose it for what it is. And it's an Aboriginal industry ripping off Australians and their money.
Absolutely. Now, look, Senator, I want to ask you about the Queensland Premier, Stephen Miles. He seems to be continuing his Soviet-era crusade to try and create state-owned fuel stations. But it's since been revealed at least 50 independent fuel retailers would need to set up shop for this plan to work. Will he get the number he needs to carry out his socialist fantasy, do you think?
No, he won't get the numbers because he's gone the next election. I've travelled Queensland quite extensively recently, and people have had enough of the Labor Party. His giggles, smiles, that's who it is. People don't have respect for him or the Labor Party. They've delivered nothing. Our health system is a hell of a mess. Juvenile crime is on the rise, cost of living, the rental accommodation, all these things are due to Labor. We have real problems in the state. Fuel stations are not going to answer it. And if people think they are, well, think again. Go and do your research and understand what this means. If they can't, the state Labor government in Queensland cannot even run a chook raffle. They can't run the police system. They can't run the court system. They can't run the hospital system. All of it is falling under the weight of ineffectiveness and the administration. So putting up petrol stations, don't worry about it. It will never happen.
I think you might be right, and fortunately so. Senator Murray Watt is the government's new Minister for Workplace Relations, and he's made a rather strange start. He's ruled out a Royal Commission into the construction industry. Now, with all the allegations surrounding the CFMEU, Senator, I would have thought a Royal Commission was called for.
It is called for, but here we have Tango Murray, that's what I call him, the quick moves that he has. And the fact is that, you know, he'll throw this at you because, see, the Labor Party depends on the CFMEU and what they've done. What we discovered in 2016 with the ABCC, that the corruption that's going on within the building industry from this union, I'm not talking about the workers, I'm talking about those high up within the union who are thugs and bullies and who have controlled the building industry for too many years. That's why the ABCC was brought in to pull them into line. The number of people, private contractors, that have actually told me they had to hand over cash, large amounts of cash, when they went to deliver the concrete. Their gates were closed on them, so the concrete couldn't be poured or went off. They made people lose a lot of money, those private businesses. They are nothing but thugs and bullies. And then the government buildings that they work on can cost the taxpayers up to 30% more for that building. They have to be investigated, and they should be under the hammer, but Labor won't do it. And that's why people must think, where do you want this country to go into the future? Because if you think that it's going to turn around under Labor by putting it into administration, it won't happen. So Labor needs to go. And I fear for this country, if we have another round of Labor after the next election, I don't believe there's going to be any chance of pulling this country back out of the demise it's going to be in, whether it be climate change, the unions, immigration, the extent of our industrial relations, everything. I think we're in real strife.
It's certainly a worry. Senator Pauline Hanson, always good to speak with you. Thank you very much for joining us on the show this evening.